As Canada and the U.S. work to see eye to eye on trade, Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke in New York last week. He called for a new partnership between the two countries as the world undergoes what he called a rupture.
Let's be absolutely clear. Canada Strong will help make America great again. Our reputation as a reliable, predictable partner has rarely been more valuable in a world where transactions are replacing relationships.
For generations, Canada and the United States have shared one of the closest partnerships in the world. The two countries share the world's longest undefended border. Their economies are deeply intertwined. Their militaries cooperate through NATO and NORAD. And for decades, leaders on both sides of the border often describe the relationship as not only important, but unique. Yet in recent months, questions have emerged about whether that relationship is entering a new phase.
We're blessed with many commodities in Canada, but we have earned the most valuable one, which is trust.
Trade disputes, political tensions, and shifting global priorities are forcing both countries to reconsider assumptions that once seemed permanent.
Why did you feel it was important to come to Canada?
Well, first of all, it's been an incredibly remarkable year in Canada in terms of its defense strategy, its defense investments, its defense industrial base development, hitting 2% of GDP, the NATO spending target. And so a lot is happening here right now. And I wanted to come at a moment of some tension in the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Canada to say that, yes, we're going to have to navigate this tension. But if you look out over the longer term, a strong, robust, healthy partnership between the U.S. and Canada embedded in a larger network of democratic allies and partners is vital to our collective security.
The Canada-U.S. partnership is not disappearing, but it may never look exactly the same again. To understand why, it helps to look at how this relationship was built in the first place. For much of the modern era, Canada and the United States benefited from a remarkable level of stability. Trade agreements expanded economic ties. Supply chains stretched across the border. Millions of jobs depended on the free flow of goods, services, and investment. At the same time, both countries shared many of the same strategic goals. They worked together on defense, intelligence, and international diplomacy. Whether responding to security threats or economic challenges, cooperation was often viewed as the natural choice. This long period of partnership created a widespread belief that the relationship would always remain strong, regardless of which political party happened to be in power. But recent events have challenged that assumption. Over the last several years, disagreements over tariffs, trade policies, and industrial competition have become increasingly visible. Political rhetoric has also become more confrontational. Canadian leaders have expressed concern about unpredictability in Washington, while American officials have sometimes questioned long-standing trade arrangements and economic priorities. What once seemed like routine policy disagreements have increasingly raised larger questions about trust and reliability. Those concerns became more noticeable when Prime Minister Mark Carney traveled to New York and delivered a message that attracted attention on both sides of the border. Carney argued that the global system is undergoing significant change. He described a world where traditional relationships are being tested and where trust is becoming increasingly valuable. His message was not simply about Canada and the United States. It was also directed at investors, businesses, and international partners who are trying to navigate growing uncertainty. Carney emphasized that Canada remains a reliable and predictable partner at a time when many countries are reassessing their economic and strategic relationships. In many ways, the speech reflected a broader shift in Canadian thinking. Rather than assuming close relations with Washington can always be taken for granted, Canadian policymakers are increasingly focused on strengthening their own position in a changing world. That shift can also be seen in defense policy. Canada has recently increased military spending and accelerated efforts to strengthen its defense capabilities. For years, successive governments faced criticism for failing to meet NATO spending targets. More recently, however, Ottawa has moved to expand investments in defense infrastructure, military readiness, and industrial production. Supporters argue that these investments are necessary not only for national security, but also for maintaining Canada's influence among its allies. The message is clear. Canada wants to be seen as a serious contributor to collective security and a reliable partner in an increasingly competitive international environment. At the same time, Ottawa has also worked to deepen relationships beyond North America. European partnerships have received greater attention. trade diversification has become a more prominent policy goal, and discussions about critical minerals, energy security, and technology cooperation have expanded significantly. These efforts do not suggest Canada is turning away from the United States. Instead, they reflect a desire to build greater flexibility in a world that appears less predictable than it once did. Many policymakers in Washington understand these concerns. Former American officials and national security experts have repeatedly emphasized the importance of maintaining a strong relationship with Canada. They point out that geography alone creates powerful incentives for cooperation. The two countries share economic networks, transportation systems, energy infrastructure, and security responsibilities that cannot easily be separated. Even during periods of disagreement, both sides remain deeply connected. But many observers also acknowledge that tensions have become harder to ignore.